So if modern public relations deals so heavily in understanding your public, you need to know what a public is and how do we break them down. So believe it or not, the term publics with an S actually is correct. Your autocorrect is going to try to fix it every single time, but in the field of public relation, the term publics is actually accurate. Basically, a public are the groups or the people that you are serving. So if you are a media creator, it's your viewers, it's your listeners, it's the people who, download your podcast, the people who read your blog. If you're a nonprofit organization, it's the people who use your services. So if you are a daycare center, it's somebody who attends, it's the parents. If you are the blind association, it's somebody who, again, is utilizing your services. If you are a company that is selling a product, it's those who actually buy your product. Those are your publics. But there's a couple of different ways we can break publics down. We can look at primary versus secondary publics and look at vertical integration and synergy, which are both terms that you actually will study in, I believe it is Introduction to Mass Media. And then we can also look at the four primary types of publics that exist. So if we start with the difference between primary publics and secondary publics. So again, remember, a public is a group of people that use whatever it is you're doing. These are the people you're serving. There are primary publics and secondary publics. A primary public are those that you have an immediate relationship with. A secondary public is the public who has a relationship with your public. So let's break this down so it makes a little bit more sense. Let's say that you have a gaming YouTube channel where you play video games and you do live streams. Maybe your primary public is kids ages 12 to 15 or 8 to 15, we'll say that. That is your primary public, but you have to consider more than just those kids, because you also have to consider their parents. Because although their parents are not watching your videos, your parents control what the kids can watch. That is your secondary public. For example, my son loves to watch people playing video games and YouTube channels. He's literally in the room with me right now, and I'm going to lean back and see what it is he's watching. Yep, he's watching a video where somebody is playing Lego Star Wars, is that? It looks like Lego Star Wars. He's watching a video of a family playing a Lego-based video game. He is the primary public. He's the one who is actually watching the YouTube channel. I am the secondary public, though, because the YouTube channel has to consider me as well, because if they do anything that I believe is inappropriate, I'm going to not let him watch that channel anymore. I now have an influence over the primary public. Let's say that you are, SUNY Erie. Our primary public are the students who attend this college. But we also have to consider more than that. We have to consider our students' parents. We have to consider the environment that we're in. We have to consider the high schools that are around us, the guidance counselors in the high schools that are around us. We have to think about our alumni. All of those are secondary publics. So it's never just the group of people that you immediately are serving that you need to think about. You need to think about everybody who has a relationship with them as well. So let's look at something like Welch's Grape Juice Company. So the primary plant for Welch's is actually located in Westfield, New York, which is not too far from where I live. A lot of the farmers around the area who grow grapes actually sell directly to Welch's. So Welch's as a company has both primary publics and also secondary publics. Their primary publics would be things like parents. So if we're looking at parents as a primary public, you also have to look at children, because often it's the children who are this product is being bought for. So you have to consider, what do the children want? Are you, creating relationships with them as well? But we can also take this a little step deeper, because one of the other primary publics for Welch's grape juice are actually wineries. A lot of the wineries in the area don't either grow their own grapes or they don't grow enough of them, so they supplement their grapes through Welch's. So if you're considering that, you also need to consider everything that has to do with the winemaking process. So literally even things like the bottlers, because that's going to raise the price, which means they're not going to be able to buy as much grape juice from you. Things like migrant workers are actually a really important secondary public for Welch's, because if migrant workers aren't working, they're not picking the grapes, you can't get the juice, you can't sell to the wineries. It's all a chain. So one of the big problems that often happens with public relations is that people are only looking at their base level primary public and not looking deeper, where you have to look deeper. You have to look at every level. Because again, let's go back to the idea that it is a YouTube channel and you're marketing to kids. You have to make sure that what you're putting out there is acceptable for the parents as well. Because if you're suddenly not getting the views that you thought you should be getting, it might not be the kids. The kids still want to watch it, but it might be that you did something to upset the parents. So you have to consider everybody who has an influence on your public as well. One way to kind of wrap your mind around this is to consider the difference between vertical integration and synergy. Vertical integration is slightly, to the side of what public relations is doing, but I think it's a really helpful way to think about an audience and to think about a public and how this actually works. So vertical integration occurs anytime a company owns or has stock in every step of the process of making something. So historically, one of the most famous examples of vertical integration ever came from the movie industry. So movie studios back in the 1940s and 50s would own everything that had to do with the movie making process. So they would own the production company that actually makes the movies. They would own the distribution company, which nowadays it would be DVD distribution. At the time, of course, it was film distribution. And they would then own the theaters. Nowadays, we will also see this with production because you will have certain companies who own the company that makes the movies. They own the company that distributes the movies. They own the theaters or the websites that actually present those movies. This is something we even kind of see in Netflix, because do you guys remember when Netflix originals first started, they were all really good? Where now, Netflix originals, it's really just hit or miss. Some of them are absolutely terrible. But they can be terrible because if Netflix is producing these movies and distributing them, they also own the online distribution. They don't really have to worry about quality control quite so much because they know they're going to put it on their website no matter what. They don't really have to worry about pleasing that distributor, that the distributor would actually want to, run their product, or in this case, show their movie or their show, because they are the distributor. Here's just a visual representation of what vertical integration can sometimes look like. It's a problem we definitely have seen within the gas companies, where the companies like BP, for example, will own the exploration team. So they're the ones who find the oil, they're the ones who get the oil, they're the ones who transport it, they're the ones that produce it, they're the ones that refine it, and they're the ones that market it. Why this is problematic is because it allows them to set the price all the way through. It, pushes competition out. It makes it so they can jack the price up at any point. So again, this is slightly to the side of what we're talking about necessarily with public relations, but it's a really good way to realize that publics run very deep. It's never just surface level. You have to think about everybody involved in that chain, and also realize that a lot of times this stuff can be done very unethically. For example, let's say that you're a car company, and you are a car company who has stocks in the steel industry. Maybe you own stocks in gas companies. Maybe you outright own a gas company. You also own insurance companies. If you own gas or stock in the gas companies and let's say the insurance companies, isn't that going to maybe tempt you to make cars that take more gas because now you're making money on the back end? Or doesn't it maybe tempt you to not worry about the safety of your vehicles as much because you're going to make money through those insurance claims as well? It gets really complicated when we look at it this way, but it's still the idea of understanding that your surface level public is not the only one you have to pay attention to. Things get really complicated really fast, and you want to try to understand the whole process. You want to try to look at the whole picture of, okay, who is my public? Who's everybody that's influencing my public? And how do all of these publics connect to one another? Vertical integration is when the publics are connected vertically. Synergy is when they are connected horizontally. Synergy is one of those buzzwords you hear in the media all of the time, which basically says we need synergy. We need constantly to be developing our synergy. And basically synergy is the idea of various elements working together to create something bigger. So in the terms of, media or corporations, it's basically when several media subsidiaries work together. So we've already mentioned that in the case of Dove and Axe, where they are not actually in competition with one another. They are all owned by the same parent company. That is synergy right there. Or think about all of the restaurants that are all actually owned by the same parent company. We do most commonly see this idea of having lots of smaller companies owned by one larger company when we look specifically at the media. Now, this image here is actually technically out of date because there's constantly buying and selling of different properties. But the idea basically is, is that pretty much every bit of media in this country is in some way, shape, or form owned by one of 6 different companies. That means even though you may think that you're getting various thoughts and opinions, you're kind of not, because everything is being filtered through these 1 or 2 parent companies. So think about Disney, for example. Disney at this point feels like they own absolutely everything, and Disney is actually one of the smaller of these parent companies here. If we're looking at something like Viacom, Viacom owns absolutely everything. And this is an example of synergy. Again, it's not something we're going to talk about a whole lot in this class. It's just a good way to think about how your public works, is that things are always connected to each other and they're always influencing one another. So a good public relations person is going to be able to look beyond their immediate public to figure out, okay, well, what is actually influencing them? Who are they connected to? We can also look then at our 4 primary types of publics that exist. We have consumers, producers, enablers, and limiters, and there does tend to be a lot of overlap between these categories. So your consumer are those that immediately use or buy your product. So these are the ones that you immediately are servicing. So again, this will be the people who are watching your YouTube channel. This is the people who are, stopping at your brewery and drinking your beer. These are the people who are attending your college or buying your t-shirt. These are your consumers. Producers are those that help to create or produce the product or service. So in some cases, it may be you. If you are the person who is, having a podcast, if you are making your own t-shirts, you in that case are the producers. But if we are looking at something like, say, you are, producing t-shirts and you're selling goods online, you then have to look at who are your suppliers. Because unless you are actually growing the cotton and making the t-shirt itself, you then have somebody that you're buying from. So those are also going to be your producers. Enablers are basically those that allow for your service or product to exist, and limiters are those who get in the way of it. Let's look at an example so we can really kind of break down the difference here. Let's say that you are Target. Who are some of the customers or consumers of Target? That would be the actual customers. It'd be the people who come in and they buy your products. And then, of course, you could break these into lots of different subsets as well, different types of customers, what kind of things they're buying. You absolutely can break it down that way. Producers would be those that, again, create or allow for this product to actually exist. So this would be things like the employees, the people who actually work there, the people that you buy the products from, the different people who are helping to make the commercials, anything like that. Enablers could be anything from unions who are, helping with the employees, to the unions for the drivers, influencers, celebrities, community leaders, anybody who is helping your business exist. Limiters are anybody who's getting in the way of it. So it could be other stores. It could be, once again, unions. Again, there's a lot of overlap between enablers and limiters here. It could be politicians who are making laws that make it difficult for your business to operate. The Target that we have here in Orchard Park over at Quaker Crossing, I actually really do not like that Target, not because it's anything wrong with the store, but I hate the parking lot. The parking lot and the traffic coming in and out of that location is absolutely horrendous, to the point that around Christmas time, I actually will try not to go there because I always end up getting stuck in traffic coming in and out of the parking lot. So in that case, the parking lot could literally be considered a limiter. So again, when dealing with your public, you really have to look at it in a lot of detail, and publics are something we are going to come back to later on in the semester as well.